to what you talk about the 9,700 because there's a couple years we didn't purchase any vehicles, so the number went down drastically.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to evaluate.
It's a real difficult thing to work around because, I paid this what it's going to cost if we bought it out straight out right. But even if I bid that 10-ton unit out, say after July 1st, I would not get that truck until probably February the following year. Mm-hmm. So that'd be the earliest. So it's hard to figure that number out because you don't know when you're going to get it, when it's going to come, what budget year, and that kind of thing.
Sure. So, I mean, it's like, it's like nailing jello to the tree, but I'm trying to get a sense of it.
Right. But, we go back to we talk about that. You brought up a good point about, keeping that money at the same level, say $65,000 a year. And that's what I tried to do 24 years ago when I made the 10-year list out on vehicles. Because if you looked at 10-year list, if we'd have followed it, it would have maintained at $65,000 a year because I had 10-ton units we bought, which is the most expensive trucks, certain years, and I didn't buy any pickups. And the following year, I'd buy like 2 pickups, which would be payment on that be $65,000. And then the year after that, I'd buy a couple of 1-tons or a street sweeper or whatever. I try to keep that money at the same cost per year, but we didn't purchase the vehicles we needed to do.
Okay.
So now we're really behind. I mean, some of these vehicles, you can see on the list, it was, need to be replaced, and some of these were supposed to be replaced in 2009. So we're behind. Okay. That's why it's kind of important to follow the plan. I mean, we all preach it, right? Let's get a 5-year plan. Let's get a 10-year plan. Here it is. So, okay. Any more questions on that one? Okay.
Hang on.
Line item 57066, and that is, again, the street department's fees for the stormwaters in Vienna, and that's a $100,000 rotation over into it. Okay.
So I have a question with that.
Sure.
So, that $100,000 comes out of this budget, goes to the stormwater, right? And
Yes.
so then that's a fee-based, we, collect, I think it's about $248,000 for the residents, another $48,000 for the businesses.
Correct.
So basically you have $400,000 for that stormwater. That seems like super low. And the reason I say that is because if you look around, and we've talked about the master plan a million times, there's probably $2 million, and I'm probably being very conservative. You have a better idea than I do. But, for me, I'm saying there's probably about $2 million right away in stormwater that you can identify. So this seems like a problem that we just haven't wrapped our heads around what the solution is, because we don't collect enough money either through the fees or out of the general fund to really keep up on our stormwater. So what do you have a recommendation for that for the long term?
Let's just talk about stormwater, and there's a misconception of stormwater, and we'll discuss it. Okay, stormwater on the fees, what we collect, it's actually for testing, sampling, employee wages, and doing specialty projects as reference to rain gardens, retention systems, stuff like that. I still take money out of this projects, the $850,000 I asked for in street projects to upgrade storm drainage systems, okay, which takes full force of the water, upgrade the size pipe, take it to pond run. The stormwater is to pay for retention systems, okay? So, like 58th or 8th Avenue, or, do something in that area like we did on 41st Street. A couple years ago, we put a retention system in that, and that come out stormwater. Okay.
So I know in stormwater right now, I mean, we're looking at the big project being Pond Run, and that's, that hadn't been done in 30 years, whatever. So that's a little outside of the norm. But are you suggesting that we are fine the way we are right now with stormwater to do the retention systems and et cetera?
No, I never say that, because we're always low on money. But retention systems at Greenmont and Glenbrook and Pond Run, that's a unique situation. I've been here for 24 years, and we have not done anything to them projects. I think it was 5 years before I come here, they actually dredged Pond Run. That should be a general budget project, because that's more of a flood control. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, I've got you all confused.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not confused at all. I'm not confused at all.
Okay.
I think we've talked about this before. I think the stormwater fee needs to be looked at on the commercial side, not on the residential side. And I think it's out of balance, in my opinion. And I think this has been looked at before, way before I was ever around. This was looked at, if I go back and look at minutes in, 2015 or 2016. And so it concerns me long-term that we're not adequately meeting the needs of stormwater, and that, so that's where I'm at.
Our stormwater fee in commercial accounts is substantially lower than what most cities have. It has a stormwater department, okay? They usually go per 1,000 square foot, and they have a certain rate for impervious material, so.
Right.
We just haven't addressed that. Okay.
Okay.
But that's something the utility board should bring up, and if they want to do that, so, okay.
I've tried, but we'll keep trying.
All right. Okay. That's it. Easy, all right? So, you guys got any questions? Oh, good. All right, thanks.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Brofman, the HR Director, and I am going to quickly go over personnel, number 422. And of course, line items 1 through 10 is something that Amy Roberts takes care of. So I just need to jump all the way down to line item 41, which is my materials and supplies, and I've simply just added an additional $300 onto that. I tend to do a lot of purchasing some safety items for all the departments, and I just tend to take it out of my materials and supplies. Things like COVID stuff have really ran me a little bit close to the end of my rope on this. Are there any questions on that?
I have a question. I know lines 1 through 11, and, Amy takes care of that, but I did notice, because you did put that in your budget, so I was going to ask this question. So the salary part, that is your salary alone, the 48.4, is that correct?
Yes, I'm the only one in the HR.
That comes out of that, right. So, and then I noticed the longevity, and you have it estimated at 51,728. I'm trying to figure that one out, because it's a 35-cent longevity, so that's less than $800.
Right, that's the 728 on top of that is the 35-cent longevity added on. I'm just simply asking for my wage to go up to 51 a year, and then that includes also add on the 35-cent longevity. And of course, if we get any other kind of increase across the board, I'd like to see that added as well.
Okay, so just so I understand, so you're asking for your salary to be increased to 51.
Correct.
Okay, and then, okay, gotcha.
Yes. And that still keeps me down at the bottom of the barrel.
Sure.
Other questions?
I kind of do have another question, but I seem to be the only one asking
keep
questions.
going. You're good.
I mean, anybody can help me out here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Roger.
I know. I was trying to do the math in my head too, though. That's why I'm glad that you clarified that, because there just wasn't any verbiage saying I would like a pay increase beyond longevity. So, okay.
Well, that's why I put includes longevity on the end, and I guess in my mind it was making sense, but hopefully I answered your questions.
So you're asking for the 35 cent is
It's a given,
it's a given.
yes.
So you're asking for a pay increase to 50, what was that?
51.
51 plus across the board pay if that's approved by the city?
Yes. At the time I started this, no one was talking about an across-the-board increase, so we all just look at our own budgets. But I think it's only right that if everybody's going to get the increase, my department gets it as well. And jumping me up to, if you notice, jumping me up to 51 isn't that big of an increase. I don't,
I mean,
yeah, it's not that much. And you know, I've taken on a lot more
In today's
responsibilities and
market?
stuff, and
You're saying that's not that much?
well, in today's market, you know,
I mean, I'm not
I
trying
don't
to
like
be
to beat
critical.
around the bush
I'm
about
not,
this, but
I'm
because
not
I
trying to be
don't like,
critical, Stephanie. I'm just trying to understand
right,
what,
I don't like the
what you're
ones who will
asking.
come in and ask for an increase and say, if I compare myself to this city, that city, et cetera, I would be making this dollar amount. But I can guarantee you, if you want me to go there, I can say, if I were going to work anywhere else, it would be $70,000-$90,000
you know, I mean,
in my department.
I agree with you on your concern on that as well. So, anyway, I'm like the others. I'm just trying to get a grasp on where we were headed with this. So,
Yeah, well, hopefully I answered the question.
and do you know, you're just the one standing there now, so.
So I'm going to get.
It's in my head, and so it's going to come to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Where did the $2 come from? Because I mean, I feel like it's kind of strange that everybody has said $2, $2, $2, $2. I mean, was this like a department head meeting that you guys all talked about $2?
Yes, we do get together and we discuss what we all think as a group for all of our employees, okay? And we kind of, you know, batter it back and forth. We all decided on $2 because I was going to wait, and you guys kind of get me ahead of everything. But part of my speech tonight was going to be not only offering the employees the $2 increase, but our beginning wages are so low, $11.89 for the laborers, $11.68, I believe, for the clerical workers. Those rates have not been increased for years.
Let me ask you this too, and this is me trying to make the conversion from private business to government. Are there employee evaluations?
Absolutely.
I mean, so but their pay increase is not based on their evaluation.
No.
Why is that not? Why is that? I don't understand that.
We have a sliding scale that's called, we have like a C1, a C2, C3, et cetera, et cetera. Entry-level people come in as perhaps a C1, and if their job duties change, then they're recommended to go to a C2, and that's how they advance. We don't give anyone an increase based on their evaluations.
Okay. But there's also no incentive for people who are great and people who are not, who are just doing what they should be doing.
You're absolutely right.
So
I have preached that and mentioned that many times, but it seems as though some people may lean towards the people they really like or they don't like.
Well, what is the
So they try and
solution?
stay
So
away
like,
from that.
if you could make a solution to say, we want to reward the employees who are going above and beyond and who are just great and faithful and doing all these things, and they're moving up in their responsibilities and we're retaining them and all of that stuff. How do we incentivize them? Is it only through pay, or do we do it other ways? And I don't like an across the board pay raise for everybody the same amount. I think that's ridiculous. I just do. So there you go. That's where I stand.
And I agree with you 100%.
I don't think it's
However,
fair, and I don't think it's productive, and I think there's got to be a better way to do that. I think we owe it to our employees. We have great employees. Then let's treat them like they're great and not just give them all the same. I think that's.
And I agree
Not
with
fair.
you 100%. There's a lot of employees who should have a wage increase who's not getting it because they do go above and beyond. And I'm sure there are those slackers out there in everybody's department. But we've always just had the sliding scale. Why we do that, it's been there for years.
And so this is like, to me, fresh start, because I don't care how we've always done it. I'll go on record as that.
Well, thank
I don't
you.
care how we've always done it.
Thank
I don't
you.
care what it is,
However,
whether
it's
it's
very gonna be
payroll or
very-
whether it's whatever it is. I don't care if it's whatever we talk about up here. I don't care how we've always done it. I want real solutions for stuff that we're doing for today and tomorrow.
Well, one way to start that is to have a wage study done.
Yes.
I'm going to weigh in on this
It's-
too. I'm sorry.
It's very expensive to have a wage study done, but if you want a wage study done, I'm all for it. Put the money in my budget and let's do it. Because I agree, there needs to be a change.
And what do you get out of that wage study? Is it just a comparison to what everybody else has, or does it look at the different tiers of productivity or longevity and all those? What other things is it measuring?
They look at the job descriptions. They come in and they review the job descriptions as well as they go out in the field and identify if this person's job is exactly what that job description says. And then it is compared throughout other cities.
And I feel like in some ways Vienna is, I mean, of course, every city is unique. Nobody's the same. Big cities, little cities, we're all different.
You're right.
But whether we're looking at how we have this huge retail area and revenue place there, and we've got our sleepy town, right, in some ways. So I would hope that maybe we could then be compared with somebody similar, and not just population size, but the makeup of our area. We're not in the middle of nowhere. We're kind of surrounded by everybody else. So,
And I have done some studies myself with area cities, and we do tend to fall a little lower than the others, about $3 to $4. And that's why I said with the $2 across the board, right now we need to increase those lower beginning wages, and to bump that up $2. The only way to keep that fair for all the employees is to bump up all of their wages. Because if you hired someone in, let's say last year at $11.89, and then this year you're going to bump that wage up, the beginning wage up to $13.89, well, now you have a new hired employee that's coming in at a higher rate than what the other employee is.
and just to help me, and again, to help me transfer this into public stuff, is that how help me out, business owners? Is that how it works for other businesses? So like now, Mardell's hiring at $18 an hour, but if they start hiring at 19, I mean, do they do that for everybody in
You
their
gave me a
system?
perfect segue to what I wanted to talk about with respect to this conversation. So the difference between public and private sector is considerable. When I own several small businesses, and mostly I've just learned from Amy and being involved in this budget process for a number of years now. The sliding scales, the total compensation plan, what do you get in health insurance? What's your retirement look like? Are you in public retirement? Are you in private? PIA, our insurance, compare that to the wage. The idea, and I would defer to the department heads really, and including Amy in particular, the way that public employees get compensated is different than the private sector. At some point, I can't make payroll, right? And I tell all my people, go home. Well, that's, the city of Vienna is not going to roll it. It's apples and oranges some. And so, the difficulty, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert by any means on this, or there's not a pathway to it. But the difficulty as we go through this budget process to say that we need to budget our payroll or our employees And then we also want to build in an ability to give merit-based income versus classification as you achieve additional certifications in the way that we bring employees forward. It's just different. And so I think it would be very complex to try to vary. And I would hazard a guess that the way that the city of Vienna compensates their employees is pretty uniform in the government sector. And so, in terms of these things, and we do have, and when we do consider budgets, we do consider the value of our health insurance plan, even though we put more costs on our employees now, and the fact that we don't have public retirement, like I believe the city of Parkersburg does. Big difference, okay? And then now we're also, like Craig said, but we are competing with the private sector, and like the police department has talked about, bringing in younger 25-year-old officers and saying, we got a great retirement plan. And that's the last thing they're thinking about, right? They're like, well, what am I going to have in my, sock at the end of 2 weeks? And so becoming competitive, we've all seen the signs on all the reader boards in town, $12, $14, $16, $18 inflation. And what's that going to look like? And how's that going to come out of our budget? And so that's where I think that it's not, you can't make these big shifts in the way that we try to do things, okay? And but we do, and I do agree that if we're going to provide the public service that our citizens expect, that we have to be competitive in the employment. And that's why from the day I started in this job, I've said our employees, the quality of the employees, I don't care how nice a backhoe you got sitting there. If you don't have a good operator, it's not going to tear it up and be able to get the job done in 2 hours and not 6. All right, then you got to hire those people and you got to compensate them, and those are important to us. So that's my 10 cents on what you said about the private sector versus public.
So before we go on, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
This is a reality thing, okay? Have you ever managed employees at one of your previous jobs?
Did I manage employees?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I did not.
Okay, so let me tell you the reality of this. We have this discussion all the time at budget. Every year it comes up. Are we going to do merit-based raises, or are we going to do across-the-board raises? Okay? Every one of the departments in the city has a number of employees. Every one of the department heads has people that they rely on every day to do the jobs that are not easy, okay? But the fact of the matter is, when you start picking and choosing who gets a raise based on a department head's recommendation, the ones that get the raise, then they don't look at it that way. Stephanie mentioned the fact about you pick and choose your favorites.
Favoritism.
You can't help that. When you have people that you can call at any hour of the night and day to come out and do a job, and you know that they do it 100%, that obviously is someone you can rely on. But when you ask a department head to start picking out of his crew and say, all right, I like you, you do a good job, we're going to give you a raise, and the other guy looks at him and says, hold on a minute, I work just as hard as he does, I'm here the same time, I come out, but I don't get the bump, that's problems. You absolutely start issues within the crews that it's just not a good working situation.
But is that where the evaluations come in? I mean, I would think that if you've done the evaluation and this guy's going above and beyond, and the guy right beside him is saying, well, I go above and beyond too, but that's not what his evaluation says. I'm not trying to be argumentative.
No, I want you to be, because I want you to understand this is bigger than what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay?
Why do we do
Roger.
evaluations?
Roger, hold on a minute. The other side of this, all right? Every department head in this city has people that they would put forth to say, this is one of my best employees, all right? Mm-hmm. Over the years, as things have gone, and Stephanie mentioned that if you get your CDL, you get a bump, all right? If you become a crew leader, you get a bump, all right? That's the way that we typically reward the employees that are willing. You don't have to have a CDL. You don't. There's some guys that, don't like driving the big trucks. But if you go to the extra expense or the extra time of getting the certifications, then yes, we'll bump you up in the classifications. Every employee, as a worker for the city of Vienna, gets paid whatever dollar amount is set forth. But the ones that move on and become crew leaders, or the ones that go forward and can run the specialty equipment, Craig calls them operators. We have guys that can run the backhoes. We have guys that can do the special jobs, okay? If you're willing to take the training, we've got class 1 water operators. We've got class 1 sewer operators. We've got different classifications for things that we have to have. But when you start picking and choosing out of the entire crew, it opens a can of worms that absolutely can't be controlled. It just can't. And so you give raises based on merit for going and getting the extra certifications or taking the additional training, which we have to have. I don't see how that you can go and pick out 1 or 2 employees out of a crew of 6 guys and say, okay, you 2 right there, you've done a great job. We're going to give you a raise. It's never worked in the past. That's the reason why, and it was that way when I came. This is not something that is me. That's the way it's came.
But we've tried it in the past, you said it didn't work in the past. So that means we have tried it in the past?
No. It's the whole issue being discussed is one of those things where the possibility of it not going well has kept it from ever being done. Because what you're going to do is if this would gain some momentum you would be putting in the power of the department heads, the ability to give raises to the people that they thought should deserve it. Okay? Wait, hold on. Mr. Azinger.
I've been in government a long time. A lot of people think too long, but you can't compare, a lot of ways you can't compare private enterprise with government. The guy that owns Joe's backhoe service, he's a dictator. He doesn't have to go to a board to find out how much he's going to pay his people. Or the guy that you think of a private business, I don't care restaurant, that guy's a dictator. He can pay what he wants to pay, and he doesn't have to come to a board and ask them, we being the board. I mean, there's 3 levels of government. There's the executive. If this is a private company, you'd be the president. You can pay them whatever you want to pay them. But you can't because it comes before the city council. And your points about department heads doing it, that could be a real problem.
Roger.
I see the mayor's point, and we've discussed this for as long as I can remember being on council, but it just, out of curiosity, mostly it just leads me to the question is, what are the evaluations for? Okay.
You guys are doing my job for me. Thank you very much.
Well, no, it's really difficult in the public works field, okay, because these guys are going out, I run water, sewer, stormwater, street department, correct? Okay. Each one of my guys working in departments. So some of them are skilled in what they do. Some of them are great concrete finishers, but they can't work equipment. Okay. Not very good at mowing grass. Great concrete finishers. Some of my guys have the class 1 or class 2 water operators, which is, if you get a class 2 water operator, it's 5 years for you to take the test of employment. Okay, so it'd be real difficult to say that guy really stands out for concrete, so I'm gonna give him a raise, but he's really terrible at weed. He drags behind other guy. I had one guy, it was an older guy, you could stick him upon a run, he'd clear them all back in a day. I mean, he loved running weeders. He couldn't pour concrete. So is he a slacker? No. He's good at what he did. But we just don't do one item. We do several. We're not like a plant where we go in and the guy works the same machine all the time. We do various things in this department. You talk about appraisals, okay? I do appraisals. Sometimes slack along with I'm gonna tell you, but.
Still waiting on them.
Yeah, appraisals,
You mean evaluations?
Yeah.
Evaluations, appraisals, when I do that evaluation, I sit down with the guy and we discuss what his goals. Okay, we start S1 goes to S6, different rate classifications, like 50 cents per hour raise each classification. If the guy is not performing, I'm gonna discharge him. Okay, that's what your evaluation is.
And if you're going to discharge someone, one of the questions they're going to ask in court is, do you do evaluations?
Yeah.
Where's this person been with their evaluations?
Right. So
And
I
it
said-
gives the employees and the department heads a chance to discuss any areas that that employee may be failing at.
Yeah, there's some guys I sit down with and say, you know, you're a really intelligent guy. That's smart. I know that I want to push him to be my water or sewer operator, okay? It takes intelligence to do that, a lot of math, a lot of vocabulary. Some guys aren't that smart, but they're great workers. So how can I give a pay raise to this guy because he's smart and this guy because he's a good worker?
I sort of don't think government,
Yeah.
I mean, let's think about Board of Education and teachers, right? I think it's just kind of the nature of the beast, right? We don't look at teachers and say, who is the best teacher in the classroom and we're going to give them a raise. It's teachers across the board get a raise. You look at, the county employees, it's typically across the board, or the state employees, it's across the board. I think some of it is just the nature of government.
And that's probably why it's always been done that way.
I realize that's not a great answer, but I do think it's the beast that we are.
Mr. Scott said you wanted to add something?
Mine was simple. And it touches into what Craig was saying. The purpose of the evaluation has a couple of different things to answer Mr. Bibby's question. One is to protect the employer. It gives them something quantifiable that they can look at and say, this employee has been performing this way over a period of time. It protects the employee to some degree because they can say, well, you've evaluated me over the last 5 years at this level. Why are you asking me to leave, right? So, and it gives the employee a tool to say, this is what I did, and now I'm gone. Or to give the employer to say, this is what they didn't do, and this is why they're gone. So that's the part of the purpose of the evaluation. And the second thing that you're looking at is, in comparing public and private sector, is endemic to public and private sector. And I think either Mr. Azinger or Mr. Leach touched on it earlier. How you set up, the different governments set up different systems. We have a system that is in some respect modeled after the states, where you have employees that have classifications in each of the departments based on what skill, because that's the tool that the city has used, based on the skill in a particular department area, then they get to move a classification. So if you work as and I don't remember what yours are, Craig, what's your letter? Right, so he has S1 through S6. And so as you add something that brings value to the department, you can move up in the grade. That's how we've chosen to do it. So you're relying on your department heads to attempt to ensure that your employees are all working hard. Not all employees will give you the same amount of effort that every other employee does, but there is a standard there that the department has to live with. But in doing it that way and allowing the department head the discretion of determining the level of hard work, you're also rewarding people who take an extra bit of effort to better themselves and thereby bring something to the department. So if you have a guy that works and wants to get a CDL, he brings that skill to the department and he gets rewarded for the things, or she gets rewarded for the things that they bring. That's just how you've chosen to implement your, your carrot and your stick, right? So you can change it and you can go to something, similar to what the state has, where you allow, and that's the question that council would have to answer, is who's going to determine whether an employee is working at a level that everybody's satisfied with? Is it going to be council that meets twice on Thursday, or twice a month on Thursdays? Or are you going to leave it at the discretion of your department heads who work with the individuals daily? I don't know that there's a workable system where council members can review people's work and to put in what they believe is a system of rewards that reflects what they believe is a person's work without relying on the department heads. And that's kind of what you do now. You already have a system in place. You're just relying on your department heads to make the day-to-day judgment. And you always have to remember, cities are not like businesses. We always say that you have to run a city like a business. I think that would be awesome. So when Randy declares himself the dictator of the city of Vienna, and he says everybody in the city of Vienna has to pay $8,000 a month for water, or else you don't get any water, then, I mean, that's running it like a business, because the business sets what the price is that the market can demand. The city of Vienna would have monopoly on water and would set the rate at whatever it is, but we're not allowed to do that. Also, business can fold, an employee can go somewhere else. But if you shut the city's water off, the city can't shut its water off. The city can't stop paving roads. The city doesn't have the option. So you have to have people to do it. And I guess that's where I'm trying to answer Roger's question. This is why we have the evaluations. You have a system in place. Your department heads are your evaluators. And you have to decide, do you want to rely on these people to judge who is working hard and deserves a sufficient reward or not? You have a system in place where we've agreed that generally all employees will get an across-the-board pay increase unless they add something of benefit to the city in the term of getting a skill or an additional skill or ability. And that's the system that you have. Now, I don't know how else you can quantify hard work other than if they're here, the reasoning is that they're working hard, or at least at a level that everybody's satisfied with. And if they're not, they're gone.
Russ, if I might, based on your explanation, I'm going to, and then we can move on, but I think I'm going to be able to answer my own question with this statement. So relative to what I asked about the evaluations, very simply said that the, and Craig, you can help me with this, that the department heads consider that as a valuable tool for job performance, but not related to compensation.
Correct.
Correct, but you gotta keep in mind, just like the fire department did this year, chief made the presentation, he has S3 employee, and he said, this guy's a great worker, I like to move him S4. That's a pay raise because of what good work that guy does. Okay?
So the other part of this is, who's going to make the determination of how many employees you get to pick? You have 20. Some departments have 3. So are we going to say that every department gets to select 2 employees for a pay raise? All right? Because if you're going to allow it to where every employee gets a pay raise, if I'm the department head, I'm picking my guys or girls, whatever it would be. And you see, that's where all of the controversy starts to come in.
So I have a question. I want to go back to something you said when we first started talking about this. You mentioned a work study. Can you just briefly explain what that would entail?
Well, as I was telling Missy there, you have a company that's going to come in. They're going to go through my job descriptions, go out in the fields and compare those job descriptions to what each one of the laborers are doing. And they're trained well enough to know what kind of a wage that should be set in. And they also compare that to cities close by.
Right. So
it sounds easy, but it's not.
No,
and it's very expensive to have done.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because several years ago, it's been 3, maybe 4 years ago, the city of Parkersburg did a wage study. And when and don't quote me on this because I'm just going to pull this off the top of my head, but I believe that wage study was around $10,000, $12,000. Okay.
I'm not going to throw numbers out, but from my understanding, it was a lot more than that.
Okay, we can find out for sure, and I have a copy of that wage study now. I've looked at it, and what's interesting about it is, you do go and compare to other cities around you, okay? Because let's face it, right? It's a market. We're all, we are competing for the same people for police officers, for people who are qualified to, be a water operator, whatever, okay? people with CDLs. And so what Parkersburg found out when they did their wage study, that, yeah, they were not paying what they needed to pay, okay? And so they changed some things and they modified some things. But this brings me to my second part of the comment. Do you know how much per hour, per employee, like, what health insurance costs?
I don't have that with me right now, but
Okay,
I can
and
give it to
I
you.
apologize, I'm really not trying to put you on the spot.
And I understand that, you have questions, but
but-
I don't have all of that with me. I can figure it out.
Okay.
Maybe Amy over here, she's the numbers person. She
Okay,
works
well-
with it every day, so she may have that info.
It is, it's over $12 an hour per employee. So now you have an employee that is making, you know, and like I said, I agree 100%. At your starting wage being under $12 an hour, that's low. Now we're going to add the you know, another $12 plus per hour to pay that health insurance cost, okay? And I know we've talked, and I've been very vocal about health insurance, because to me, here's the problem. And this was touched on, I think, you know, Mr. Metz said that. You have somebody who comes in and they're, you know, you're trying to attract an employee and they're 25 years old. Hey, when I was 25 years old, I wasn't thinking about health insurance and I wasn't thinking about retirement. I was thinking about how I was going to pay my rent, how I was going to get that car payment, et cetera. And so it's really hard to do on like less than $12 an hour, okay? But, you know, as you get older, you know, those things are really important. Those things, health insurance, retirement, that's very important to me now, you know, but I'm not 25 years old. So I think that we are immovable in what our plan is and the health insurance, because they have a fantastic plan, and I don't begrudge a fantastic plan, okay? I don't. But it is a one-size-fits-all, and it's beyond Cadillac, and I use that word in actual quotes because that's what Mr. Schlindeman said one time when he was here. Then you have the vision, the dental, and you also have the health reimbursement account. So where the city's paying 60% of those costs, et cetera. And we go back to the side of what the employees put in. And Mr. Leach has said this several times, that they had an 8% increase last year. No, they most certainly did not. They pay up to 8%, okay? So to put that into perspective, if you work for the state, you're going to be required to pay, this is by the state legislature, you're going to be required to pay at least 10% of that premium. So we're not requiring that. We're below that in what the premium costs are. So I think what I'm getting at, I think that there are pieces within this puzzle to solve. We can look at things in a different way regarding having an actual wage study done, so we really can compare ourselves, you know, at all the different positions where they need to be. Maybe consider different plans in insurance, okay? The cost sharing of that, et cetera, and to get to a better place that we're able to solve this problem, because it is, I think it's very scary, because you can't attract employees at that. And there are pluses and minuses to working in private business, and there's pluses and minuses to working for government, okay? But I especially worry about this when it comes to our police officers, okay? And attracting police officers, I think we are facing, you know, they're just not able to get police officers, and nobody is. It's a nationwide problem. But I think that we're not looking at things in its entirety. There's a solution here, but we seem to be stuck in, this is the way we do it, this is the way we always do it, and we're not going to move on this, and we're not going to move on that. And then here we are, we have the same conversation every year.
And I'm just as guilty for standing up here and saying that's the way we've always done it. And it's because we do get stuck here. However, I don't want to get into the big health insurance speech tonight, because we're going to deal with that
Right.
later. But when you talk about the employees and their wages and how much we pay for their benefits. So now they've got $12 for their wage and $12 for their benefits. We do have a Cadillac plan, but you need to look at how long the city of Vienna keeps their employees, which is something that we really need to think about because they're the ones who have the knowledge.
That was exactly the question I was going to ask Stephanie is, do we know what our attrition rate of employees is, a percentage of attrition?
I have a report here, but it's not broken down with that, so I'll be sure to give it to you.
That would be nice. Thank you.
I do know that we have about 11 employees right now that are at the age of retirement within the next year. Police department, they're down 2. They have 3 that's going to retire, and they want another 2. Now, when you talk about the entry-level wages of what we offer, we can't get employees. You know what civil service test ended up being. You know what Craig said about me trying to get applicants in here. You can't do it, especially when they see $11.89 an hour. One thing I'd like, just a minute, Chuck, one thing I think you really need to look at is stop looking at your employees as a walking dollar sign. Because your employees are, they're more than that. Here it is winter, midwinter, okay? And you guys have all heard me with the same speech. They're going to be out there down in the hole in your sewer. Well, I'm sorry, that's an ugly picture for me. But you know what else is uglier? Put yourself in that employee's shoes when it's 15 degrees, wind chill factor of 5, you're down in that hole, your boots are soaking wet, your gloves are soaking wet, hypothermia sets in, frostbite. We don't think about that for our employees. The only thing we think about is that dollar sign.
No, I think you're
You have to think of
mischaracterizing.
the value.
You're mischaracterizing what I'm saying.
No, what I'm saying, I'm talking about the beginning wages. That's
Right.
what needs to
Hey,
be
hey,
increased.
ladies,
If I could, I know that this is an interesting conversation, but right now we should be focused on the presentation of the department head budgets. And I think and I'm guilty of it a little bit too. I think we've gotten a little bit far afield as to what the budget presentations are. If we could move back into that.
I feel
Well,
like it
this
is still
salaries.
relevant. I think
Yeah,
we're talking about salaries still.
Well, you're,
We can't change it very much anyway. You're trying to compare government with private enterprise, and
Well, not necessarily trying to compare that. I think
this isn't feasible.
well, if we're going to continue the conversation, then Mr. Knopfsinger, it's your turn because you have not spoken. What's on your mind?
I was just going to say that innovation is very important, whether it's government or whether it's business. And I completely agree that government is separate and different. I have worked for a large corporation, and I've been a part of that evaluation system, and it can be unfair and be distributed differently. But you're talking in terms of when business is going well, then the evaluations tend to go well. When business isn't, like Jim said, you can tell people I'm out of money and go home, kind of a deal. In government, we have to be here and run and continue to run and be sound for the future. So, but I think innovation is very important. And if there's any way that we can encourage innovation, like Mr. McQuaid said, that he might be able to actually rebuild computers and save $900 per computer. And if it's 20 computers, which it may not be that many, but that's $20,000 in a budget. That's a significant contribution to the city in savings as an employee. And if we could find some way to encourage each employee to look at what they do every day, and if they can have some innovation and change the way it's done and have an impact, I think that would be important to encourage. That's it. Thank you.
I've written down what makes us unique. I think there is, when you said innovation, that was like the right word to say. We may have limitations as government, and I wasn't trying to say let's do it like the private sector at all. That was not what I was trying to say. But some notes that I wrote down. I don't know why is it that it's a 35-cent longevity? Is that something that's across the board in government, or is that just the number that we came up? Maybe that needs
By ordinance.
by ordinance, but by ordinance, then ordinances can change, right? We can do new ordinances.
We did change that once.
Okay, so that is maybe something to look at. Maybe it's something that we have a system, because I want to be, and I'm sorry that you felt like we were seeing employees as dollar signs.
No.
I'm sorry you saw
That's
that.
not what I meant. Let me just finish what I was getting at. Not saying that our employees are dollar signs, but the entry-level position would be like a dollar sign, because the new employees coming in at $11.89, and you tell them, they go out and they see what our employees are actually doing. I'd much rather go down to Hobby Lobby, where this guy was saying it's $18 an hour. Their benefit package is almost the same, because I looked at it.
Yeah, but
They
that
pay
goes
a
to the
little bit more.
weird thing, just like what Craig said.
Yeah.
You're not going to get me to hold a slow sign no matter what. There are things that we do and we like, and there are people that belong in retail, and there are people that belong on a weed eater, and there are people that belong to concrete.
Yes.
So I don't agree with that comparison. All right, and I do agree with what Russ is saying. We're in the budget process right now. We need to be considering numbers, and I think too that we need to move on. And we're pretty far afield, and we need to get through this. Amy's still got everything she's got to do, and I'd like to take a break. We've been here an hour and a half, and it's been, and if you want to my view, because I know there were some things that I'm not prepared to talk about that Amy was asking about Manville, okay? We're in the budget process, and we need to get through these numbers, and then it starts getting worked in. And if we want to have these conversations about innovation with respect to how we can improve department performance and so on, that's stuff that goes on through the year, and with respect to these evaluations. And council, if you want to be involved with that and you want to go talk to department heads and see what's going on and see how we can innovate, that's not what the budget process is about. We need to get our numbers in place, decide what our priorities are based on our department heads' recommendations, and get through this part. So so I'd like to take a break.
I will agree.
Take a 5-minute break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Amen on what Mr.